am I going to get the best value using data as a way in which to arm yourself?
Thanks, Koi. And this comes to you, Emily. You at UNESCO, you work on cultural statistics. First of all, I mean, why do you need cultural statistics? How do those statistics serve you? Maybe have you come across situations where you actually cannot get the numbers that you require?
Yes, cultural statistics are very important because for the sector, filming sector, when you talk about the filming sector, how do we measure the value of that sector? How are we going to have people invest in you? Like you can imagine if you want to do a co-production, maybe with somebody from outside Kenya, the first thing they'll check is what is the value of this sector? Is it a place where I can put money? And then in terms of planning, how does the government rate the filming or the creative sector? It is in terms of numbers. How many people are engaged? What size of the economy? How much do they contribute? From like KRA, when you go to taxation, how much is coming from there? For them to make political decisions that impact on the filming environment. So when there's no data, what happens is decisions are affected, and the sector is just treated as one of those. Unlike agriculture, where we can talk of so many farmers engaged in this and they need this kind of resources. So allocation of also government resources becomes a challenge, because why should the government invest in you? And who's supposed to generate this data? We must, as the film sector, see the need for you even to convince even a local partner to invest in you, to support you, even the bank. You need statistics.
So you need statistics for money, for commercial purposes. So you're selling your stuff. You need to know where it will show, what are the benefits and so on. You need funding. They need to know how the industry is and so on. So there is that component. And I'm wondering now, you see, because that's the business side of film and creativity. What about from the production side? Do we need to do research? Do we need data before we even start creating stuff?
Well, you see, we're talking about creative industry. That really hits it. It's an industry, but it's creative. So you definitely need data, you need all that. On the other hand, on the creative side, you must believe in your story. And you will never know if it really appeals to the audience in the way you dream that it will. So you have to have big faith into your story, what you want to present to the audience, and then when it goes into production, then of course comes in all the statistic aspects for financing. So I think these two worlds just must marry to be successful.
Let me dig a little bit, Peter. So it's creativity. So you have to be first convinced that whatever you are going to show the world is important. You don't have to always start from the point of view that my audience would like to watch this type of movie. You start from, this is important for me, this is important for my society, this is important for my community, and so forth and so on, and this is good for me. You convince yourself. Then you hope that your audience will be in rhythm with you in terms of that interpretation. That's precisely it. Is that the case?
Exactly what it is about, yes. I mean, there are other approaches that just go from statistics and plan to do a story. Design it on data, trying to design to be sure in advance that it will be accepted by the audience. But this is definitely the wrong way. You have to come from the belief in your story, and then you go.
Yeah. I find that extremely important, because sometimes artists create things that might not be very popular. They might be imagining a future. They might be imagining a world that has not been imagined by their audiences. And I think that we have to continue claiming that space of creativity, so that even as we value our audiences, we should not lose our right to create even that which is not very appealing. Yeah, Ravi. I mean, you've also been in production for quite some time now. Have you? If you could just tell us a little bit about the type of research that you would undertake before you work on your film, and whether that's about numbers or it's about other things.
Yes, I think we are producers, Peter and me, but we are also artists. So we are writers, we are directors, and we are producers. I think as producers, you look at the figures. Their statistics, data are very important in order to guarantee the success of a process. But as an artist, it's also you are also somehow very close to those so-called magical moments. So if you have an idea, it comes out of nothing. Where does it come from? If you have a belief, where is it rooting? So I think it must be a marriage between those moments where you really believe in what has hit you, like a lightning, and also then check whether this really could be true. And I would say, as we are talking also about our project later on called Country Queen, that's I think what we did. We had an idea what it could be, but then we went through a research. We asked 700 people in Kenya, in cities and up country, what their wishes would be. Not coming with our idea, but asking them. And out of this, we found out that Kenyans or the audience wishes more female heroes or heroines, and also more narratives which deal with social economic problems, like land grabbing or child work or whatever. So, and out of this, we built this narrative together with 10 Kenyan writers we have chosen out of 50, who seem to be the best of them. So, so it's always like walking, stepping from one foot to the other. It's your intuition, your heart, your gut feeling, but then also you have to check whether this could be a success economically wise. So, and quite interesting. So we started with this approach, getting data together, and now we have a colleague from Germany here. She's there, Nadia Liszewski from Deutsche Welle Akademie, who helped us very much to bring this project alive. And she's, again, after 1.5 years doing research now with a test audience. Again, it's about data, like showing them a longer trailer of 7 minutes, and asking questions and try to see where is the majority, going for. Are these characters convincing? Are the topics convincing? Are the costumes convincing? So on, so on, so on. So then it's all about data. And we are very, very curious about the outcome. Thank you, Nadia.
Yeah, so you have a situation where, as creators, we not only follow the audience, but we also assess where the audience might be.
May I just answer
Yes.
to that because I think if you look into history of art, you always had both sides. The ones who constructed their success because they were just thinking about what do the people want, and then there were others who were just following their intuition and changed the world of art completely. For instance, like if you go to Vincent van Gogh, which to nowadays is one of the most popular artists ever, although he died very poor because he was not accepted by the audience at that time. But later on, the way he painted a landscape or whatever became very, very, very successful, and a lot of artists following him tried to copy the way he painted. So I think as an artist, you also should be able to do some things without knowing the datas. But then again, if it comes to production, and if you are a company also, being dependent on economic process, of course you should look at the data. So it's both.
Yes, it's actually always both. It's always both. Koi, I want to come back to you, and this has to do with, I mean, you work with Ipsos, you've huge track record of research, and you do media monitoring and so on. I'm just wondering, with regard, for example, to data on film and statistics on film, where would you get that data from? I mean, what type of data could be useful for the sector? Beyond, of course, the audience consumption habits, what other data might be useful for the growth of the film sector?
I think from our perspective as a research house, we do media monitoring, as you mentioned, and we track audiences, but we also do custom research, depending on what the user would want to find out. So from a perspective, when you're looking at film, and I'm going to go back to the discussion earlier about being creative and really just expressing yourself creatively through film, and how do you make sure that that's economically viable? So if we look at some of the social listening tools that we have available to us, you can look at kind of the sentiments and the trends and the kind of conversations that are really buzzing around your target audience. And those are the kind of things and narratives that you can pick up as a filmmaker, and without looking at the audience numbers, but look at the depth of the sentiments, the volumes, if you're going to go statistically, of the sentiments of specific narratives. And as a filmmaker, if you want to try get some hooks, whether it is from a marketing perspective or from a script writing perspective, that kind of data or that kind of information could be useful to make sure you connect more with your audiences. Then obviously when it comes to your marketing side of things, because I'm in a market research company, that's where I speak from, you can now look at how do I promote my content using the right channels, using the right influencers to make sure that I get that connection, and if they can communicate the way in which I wanted my film to communicate, then it can have a stronger reach and connection with the audience, even if it's not something that they knew they wanted to have in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's really a diversity of data sources, depending on the purpose that you want to achieve through the data. And I know, I mean, Emily, you've been doing some interesting stuff also at NATCOM in terms of collection of statistics. But I'm interested in knowing what type of statistics make sense for the growth of the sector, so that because you say creative industries are actually in the initial stages of growth. We have not even started scratching the potential of these industries in Kenya. I mean, there's such huge potential. What type of statistics make sense to NATCOM?
Yeah, thank you. Statistics actually are very important, and numbers don't lie. They influence the decisions that are made on filming. So when we talk about the sector, what is like the value of the sector in terms of how many people are engaged? What is the sector generating? When we look at the content, what kind of content is being produced like annually? What are Kenyans watching vis-a-vis international? Do we have those numbers? What kind of infrastructure do we have? And recently we were doing a survey for the United Nations, where countries have committed to promote cultural and natural heritage. And one of the questions we were asked is very simple. How much does your country utilize the allocation of the budget to promote the creative industries? And I can tell you, like, even film alone as a sector of the creative industries, we cannot tell what is the budget. What is being spent by both government in terms of investment and private sector in this field. The data, there's no official data. Then when you go to counties, you're also talking of so many people being engaged in filming. Who are these people? Nobody knows them. What are they generating? What ages are? So how can the government make decisions? Then if someone wants to invest in that, to compare the content vis-a-vis the local content that is being generated and the foreign content, who knows what Kenya is producing, what Kenyans are watching? Because sometimes what we get from the media, what they are telling us is just for their own purposes, just to remain in the market and to make people advertise. But the truth of the matter is that without statistics, it is very difficult for the sector to be budgeted for the right decisions, for the right interventions that affect the value chain of creation, what is required, production, distribution, because data is not there.
Yeah. So we have the data needs to be there for purpose of budgeting and financing and so forth and so on. Can be accessed by government, by commercial agencies, by media houses, and so forth and so on. But I'm also interested in. I am a writer. I haven't. Whenever I write, I don't go to start reading statistics and stuff like that before I write. I look for the story. I decide what story I want to tell, and I go deep into the story, and I generate my story. I would like to know, Ravi and Peter, you see that, and of course we do research. We do our own research for our story, but it's not the same type of research that is done externally. You know, and I'm interested in knowing the difference between the research which we do as creatives and what matters to us, as opposed to the research that is done externally for other purposes. So, for instance, if you had to commission Ipsos, that would be like large research, not an individual. As Kimani, can I commission you? It's possible, maybe more. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But what type of research makes sense to us as creators?
Yeah, the research for us is, the story I want to tell. I must know, understand the world that I'm creating. So I research in credibility. I research in what are my characters doing, what lives they come from, their backgrounds, what they're heading for, what they would do if they have this and this profession, how they do it. There's an enormous amount of research you can do there and you have to do there to completely understand your characters and your story. Not to think of something that might be, you must know, you must have hold of your story, your characters, your storylines. And then you do also a little bit of research that is very important, that you always ask yourself, would I want to see that program? So you are the first audience of yourself. And when you really, not hoping, but really can tell that film I definitely would like to see. So you do research as your own audience to find out.
So you're looking at you're looking at the storylines, you're looking at the characters, you're looking at the experiences, you're looking at the lives of people and so forth and so on, so that you can build your.
Exactly. You have in your characters, you have a lot of professions, of lives that you're not experiencing yourself. You have to do research to know how they think, what they do, how their profession looks like, how their look at the world looks like. Because there are many characters. I'm just a writer that has to find out all about these worlds these characters are in. That must be right and not imagined.
Absolutely. Do you want to add on something, Ravi?
Yes. I completely agree with Peter. That's the way it works. And if to come back to data, maybe this is also connected with data, because our brain, our subconsciousness is collecting data every second. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I can't explain how it works, but there is something like a data collective a place in us. And I think we often talk about artists should have taste, you know. It's a question of taste. If you have a good taste, you will be more successful than others, and you will be more able to really feel what your audience wants. And this has to do, I think, subconsciously also with a mathematical process, so to say. Really collect whatever the society is about, and, well, you write for the society at the end. We are talking about mass medias, don't we? So you have to you have to somehow to understand the masses.
We are always collecting data.
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously. You can never run away from data. In fact, this is the case. This is really the case. But the data collection methodology really differs. I mean, the methods will be different. And maybe you can make a comment about the methods for that could actually be used, you know, for the creative enterprise, as opposed to the commercial enterprise, you know, and whether there are moments when these methods kind of overlap, or they are always very different.
If I listen to what they were talking about, the basis of the data collection is the basis of any data collection, whether commercial or non-commercial. So Peter spoke about, you know, going to understand the lives of characters with whom they don't really understand the background of. So if you're looking at it from, you know, the term of methodology that you use, or qualitative research, you may go and look at that shopkeeper who lives in this specific area that you're not really aware of, understand their lives, immerse yourself in their lives, and in research we call those ethnographies, really understand what are their motivations, what struggles do they have, and as a scriptwriter, you know, you'd use that information to understand how do I portray this character. And on the marketing front, a brand would be able to say, okay, I understand what drives them, how do I position my brand to connect with them in that same way. So the methodologies in the way I think about it are not that different. If you're going to do a big commercial study, you may use other tools, but the fundamentals are basically the same. And then if you're going to look at, I don't know, I'm not really a scriptwriter, but if you're looking at, you know, understanding how many people have this, you know, view or hold this perception based on maybe a theme I want to explore in my study, you may ask a few people, which is quantitative research. The quality of the quantitative research or the rigor may be a bit different, but fundamentally it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course they also differ in terms of the presentation, you know, how that information eventually gets presented to the consumer, whether it's presented in terms of you know, short stories collected along the way, or it's presented in numbers and so on, and so on, depending again on who the consumer is going to be, and of course the utility of the presentation will really depend on what you want to achieve. So that if you are pitching your film to the managing directors of a media house, they will expect certain numbers, very, very specific numbers, not necessarily the storyline. The storyline plus, of course, the numbers and so forth and so on. So depending on who you're presenting this to. And then we'll open up this to more interaction. Emily, I mean, in the case of Kenya, who actually collects data and statistics for us? If, for example, we wanted to know the value of the film industry or the creative sector, where would we go?
Yeah, thank you. It is expected that in every country, the source of data, any data that is official, should be the body that is mandated to be the custodian of national statistics. And in the case of Kenya, we have Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and they do a census, they do market economic surveys regularly. But when you go to the kind of data they have at the moment, it is very hard to pull out information relating to the creative sector, and even now going to specifics like film. And this is the data that the government uses. Another source of data that where we can the people that can collect the data are the ministries that are mandated. Which is the ministry mandated to be in charge of film? Film currently is under the Ministry of ICT, and also some bit in the Ministry of Culture. So anybody would expect, if you went to the databases of either the Ministry of ICT, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and Ministry of Culture, you should be able to find some data. Then the other way that we can collect data is culture is a devolved function. If counties and data at that level, it would feed into the national data systems. That would be official data, because the source of the data is a source that can actually be accepted by government. Then private sector can also be sources of data, especially the artists network. If like we have films guilds that know their members what they are doing, they could easily generate data that they feed into maybe the ministry or the agencies like Kenya Film Commission. Then also the universities are very, very important in this area. Like we have universities in Kenya that are now teaching creative arts and media, multimedia university. How do they know what to teach unless they do research and then they have data on the market? Which skills are actually required for the market? So for us to have a national data, the sources are multiple. But for the official data, it must be the Kenya. This data must be validated and accepted by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So the issue of data requires multi-stakeholder partnership, where the ministry is working at that level with its agencies, the agencies are working with the people involved in the sector, and then this ministry is now linking with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Our role as NATCOM is to encourage the government to adopt, because the Kenya government is as ratified and is a member to several states, to several international obligations that require countries to have this data. So our role, what we are doing is to bring in the best practices. For example, the UNESCO Institute of Statistics has developed a framework, an international standard based on international and best practices. How do other countries collect data? So we are trying to strengthen capacities of our Ministry of Culture, Ministry of ICT, government agencies, and county governments to come up with standard tools that can collect data that is verifiable, that is standardized, comparable, and we are working with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, but our work is just to bring in these international practices, hoping the country can adopt them, so that if counties, for example, start generating data at that level, in a year's time we'll have a lot of data.
Yes, indeed. So it's not just data collected by, civil society or producers. For data to have impact in terms of government funding, it needs to be verified by the national institution that is mandated by the state to collect that data. And in our case, it's actually the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Yesterday, I was talking with someone here who told me that we don't have a lot of, we assume we have a lot of content in Kenya, a lot of film content. And he told me we don't have a lot of film content. And of course I was like, wow, you can't be serious. And he said, yeah, we don't have a lot of content. Now the only way we would know if we have sufficient content is by collecting data. So that we can actually sustain the film industry as it grows, as the need for films becomes important, that we are able to sustain this. Very quickly, Ravi, yeah.
Yeah, yes. I would like to connect also to this specific data aspect, because artists in Germany also have sometimes hard times, because it's in nearly all the cultures. The artists somehow play a different role in society, different than people like doctors or lawyers or whatever. The society somehow needs art, but on the other hand doesn't know really, so what is it all about, and so on. There are a lot of parents also telling their kids, no, don't get artists, this might be quite dangerous and whatever. And in this discussion was also connected to a research the German Ministry of Economic did, and found out that the creative sector in all is turning around per year $110 billion a year. So it's comparable to the chemical industry in Germany, to the bank sector in Germany, and even is turning around as lot as the automobile industry. So with these data in mind, of course, you have a total different point of, arguing or, now my English is missing, I'm so sorry. But this gives you another security that what you are doing is important also for the society and has an economic impact. So my feeling here in Kenya is that these data are still missing, and so maybe a research on that could also help also to enforce and underline the art is really important also. And I think this is also the reason why we are here. So I think our job, because the German Ministry of Development asked us to also put up a project which could develop the TV industry, which quite obviously is not doing so well if you compare to the international TV series market, which is really doing very well, but Kenyan products are not to be found out there. So I think that's why we are also here to help to improve this. Maybe Peter wants to comment on that.
Yes, I think he should. I think you should comment on because I'm very interested in precisely what you are doing with the TV series. If you could just make a comment about that, yeah.
Yes, I mean, especially nowadays, the TV series is definitely the means that produces most job opportunities, and not only for now, but for a lengthy period of time. If you imagine that you wrote a lot of soap operas, obviously, so you know that very well. That you have if it's running for 3, 4, 5 years, and you have a huge crew that can work and work and work and work. So it's the best possibility to create sustainable job opportunities, and that is the best way to strengthen the film industry.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. One of the ways in which you build the industry is through TV series. Television series can carry a lot of characters and can feed a lot of families because they are long range. I mean, if you can have a series that goes on for a long time with multiple storylines and multiple settings and so forth and so on. So they do that, and of course, but in the case of Kenya, we have witnessed a phenomenon which I would like you to comment on, and this is the phenomenon of foreign TV series, and what we have are basically voiceovers of the series. Is that a dangerous thing? I mean, the fact that we are doing voiceover of Indian TV series and Mexican Brazilian serials and so on. Is this good for Kenya, do you think?
No, it's not good for Kenya. But the way out is that Kenya is just producing own TV series, because Kenya has so many stories to tell, and yes, that just has to be done. What we're doing now is trying to implement a model that we could with co-production, but working with Kenyan content, Kenyan crew, Kenyan cast, and not bringing in from outside, but just the minimum bringing in, hopefully funding, to create a model how Kenyan TV series can be on a quality level that will not only be successful in the area, but will be able to compete internationally. So that's the goal we're after, and I'm convinced that there is so much talent, so much knowledge, so many great actors, so many great crew members, and so many great stories to be written, that sure, this will work.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to make a...
Yeah, just on the line that this also was, because we were working and are working with a lot of young filmmakers, writers, directors, producers, and so on. So that's also their approach, they don't want anymore to have dubbed stuff. They want to do their own stuff because they are proud of their own, creativity and Kenyan narratives, which we, coming from Europe, find absolutely fascinating. And what you can see now also, if you go to the streaming platforms, is that local content also can be very successful. Now we are coming back to datas. So the more local it is, and if it still can connect to the global audience, so if you can really feed both sides, it can be also a huge economic success, feeding a lot of families because you get jobs out of it. So I think we see a lot of young Kenyans are convinced that they can catch up with the international TV series boom. We just went to Berlinale where they said like it's the golden era of TV series, of high-end TV series. Kenya cannot catch up. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. I mean, there is data to show, there is research to show that the more local, the more attractive, and much more sustainable. So local production is actually the best way to go.
Exactly. I just wanted to add, in terms of when we look at the data and we look at the top programs in Kenya amongst Kenyans, I mean, it's really the local programs. Those are the ones that have the highest ratings and the highest engagement. So we have that affinity. But the fact that we're still engaged with the foreign soaps tells us that probably there's a narrative and a storyline that we're missing on a local front. And I mean, since you've done soap operas and you know the popularity of them, we can also explore that front. And I can imagine how entertaining it would be to have a very well-produced Kenyan soap opera in the market. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's what's missing is that a couple of things are missing. And I don't want to get into that, but I can tell you that it's the romantic story. We don't have enough of that in the current productions in terms of our series. There is a sense in which our series are seen to be too serious, and people sometimes just want to have a good time, to have the suspense and the depth of the inner, experiences and so on. And I think that and the intensity of the cliffhangers. I mean, the foreign soaps, really work towards that entertainment value of the cliffhanger and suspending all our emotions at that moment. Our pieces sometimes kind of finish rather quickly and so on. So I can see what's missing. I can see the potential, but I truly believe that this is an area we need to grow. We need to grow more of local content. We need to create more dissemination outlets and so forth. And we need to fund this. It's not easy. It's also a very expensive venture. Whether one is talking about investing in research and statistics, very, very expensive. Whether one is talking about production and so on, also very, very expensive. So there should be some kind of input from the state and others, and data becomes very important because then you build the argument for the investment in local production. Yeah, so you never really run away from data and statistics. I think it's an opportunity now to engage with the panel. I think we'll start. Do we have someone holding the mic for us? Someone from KFC who can help me? We'll start with you. We'll come to both of you. Yeah. Right there at the back.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for a lovely panel. My name is Emily Wanja. I'm an impact producer. I thought I was going to be on that panel, but I was too shy when I came to come to the front. But all good. I just
please come.
No, it's too late, but I still can speak from here if you allow me.
Okay.
So I wanted to touch on a point that was raised on data and story, and I just remembered a story that I'd love to share with you. If you have time, you can check out Riot Studios. And Riot Studios, for instance, what they did, they got an assignment from Apple, and Apple were just about to release their S6 phone, and so they wanted to target the millennials, but they didn't know if the millennials, first of all, would be interested in this S6, but also more than that, they wanted to know how do we put functions on this phone that are attractive to the millennials. And so the assignment for Riot Studios was to find out, what do millennials really like? And so they discovered millennials actually, in the States at the time, were really interested in outdoor activities, things that were experiential, like adventurers and everything. So they gave this information to Apple, and Apple figured, okay, so we have a really good camera on this S6. So how do we then show the millennials that it's a good companion for you? So they went and did a documentary called Wasphere. You can check it out on YouTube. And that documentary was filmed entirely on the iPhone S6. It's a beautiful, poetic documentary about this woman who's the first woman to scale the Himalayas. And so when that was released, the uptake was really good, and it showcased what a powerful camera the iPhone 6 is. So that's like a good story for me in relationship to data and story. And data analytics are playing more and more role in the kind of stories we create and the kind of people finally we go to target. So I'll digress for 1 minute and just tell you about impact producing.
Yes.
Or impact films.
And I must tell you, Emily, I was actually looking forward to this conversation because, you know, I needed to know what impact is doing.
Yeah, so just in a nutshell, please allow me, I won't hog the mic for too long. So when we talk about impact stories, most of the time there will be, what I have been dealing with is documentaries that will touch on social justice issues. And so you're taking a really beautiful story. Priority here is on story, a really well-told story, and you're looking at what impact it can create in society or in a certain community. Fiction does that a lot as well, if you look at what participant media does, for example. And in impact, they go hand in hand with data. You are going to take your story or your film, you're gonna figure out what issue am I going to tackle, what impact do I want this film to achieve, because what we do is so powerful. The moment you take a film, it's got the power to humanize a really complex issue. Mm-hmm. For instance, if you talk about climate change, you know, a lot of people will ask you, isn't that the stuff that they talk about in UN conferences and everything? But then if you put a story into that, it generates empathy. And that ability for a film to connect with the audience, it doesn't matter who it is, on all levels, that's the power of it. Mm-hmm. And so every time we're dealing with impact, we're dealing with an element of monitoring and evaluation. Mm-hmm. We're dealing, I heard someone mention earlier, about what you would call your baseline survey or needs assessment. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to figure out, how do I show that at the end of this film actually achieved a certain impact? So for instance, in the project I'm working on, we have an element of monitoring and evaluation. I can tell you how many people have watched the film in impact screenings. I can tell you how many people whose lives will be impacted by the project that we're carrying out with the impact of the film. So I think right now for any producer, you cannot, data is your business, just as market is your business. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Emily, really, for that contribution. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Aaron. I'm a student at, hi. I'm a student at the Multi-Choice Talent Factory. And from your presentation, ma'am, I feel like I'm not convinced as to why the government is not taking firm action towards getting this data from the film industry. And if the government is lagging behind in that aspect, is this like something when it comes to research that Ipsos can take on independently, let me say from different individuals commissioning Ipsos, and will you be able to get the data that probably the government is not fully getting within that space? Thank you.
Yes, and I'll give you a chance to respond to that question. It's a very, very important question. Why don't we have the data on film industry? We keep going back to Nyariki 2007. You know, it's unacceptable. Yes.
It's really funny he said that because I actually have a report that recently was produced by HIVA and commissioned by the British Council. But it's really just a follow-on on what you said, that this came out just a couple of months ago, so it's been sorely lacking. But my question is more to do...
Is it on film? Is it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So my question is about, so we have all these statistics. So in there they say we have 80 films shot in Kenya, but where are they? So my question is more about the archive. Where can we see these things? So we have the numbers, but we don't have the access to these things. So I'm hoping maybe that's something that you guys can take on, in the sense of it being our culture, our creative output. So I actually really checked on KFC. I checked all the websites that support film. You can't even see a trailer of a film. So as much as we have the numbers about what exists, it would be really wonderful if you could actually see, even if it's a small snippet of what this stuff looks like, outside of finding random clips on like YouTube.
Yes, a very important question. And some of them, the fact that they are commissioned, you never have access to them locally. And I hope that we can make a comment about this. Yes, Steny.
Oh, thank you so much for this powerful presentation. My name is Godfrey Jenga, and I have very keen interest in film in terms of the impact it can create on our society, especially so as a tool of moral value induction to among our youths. We are living in a 21st century where we are really finding we are seeing very, very weird behavior among our youth in terms of, is it drug and substance abuse? Is it about suicide? Is it about, there are so many challenges that they are facing. Now, I'm interested to find out, and this question now comes to the issue of data. I'm doing a research and I'm stuck at how do I collect the data, and specifically because I'm narrowing down to the Kenya National Drama Schools and College Film Festival, which has barely been there for about 5 years. How can we use that forum to actually give a paradigm shift on value and moral and cultural and even national values induction among our youth, so they come to like our country, they come to love their country, that they also appreciate. So how, give me an idea, how do I collect the data when it comes to the data collection? Which approach should I use? Thank you.
And you can also, as you respond to that question, what type of data do you need to show that actually the youth are lost? Or either to kind of build the argument, because one could be feeling intuitively that maybe they are not on the right track, but maybe they might be on the right track. So, and I think that is also an important conversation. How do you ensure that you are providing a diversity of content to our youth, so that it's not too preachy, as it were, that there is entertainment and you're not over-moralizing these issues and so on? What type of data do you require for that type of work? Do you have any other comment, or can we? Yes, please.
My final question was just to, I find that Germans do really great research. So I just want to understand how probably there are lessons that you can share with us. Yes. From that regard.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Koi, do you want to start with, is this something that Ipsos can pick up on data collection?
Yeah, when it comes to the issue of morals and understanding what kind of content is going out there and what the perception is, I know that kind of also falls under the KCB kind of mandate, and it's something that they could commission. But what is interesting to also look at is not look at it from, I guess, adult perspective, but also from a peer perspective. So one of the CSR activities that we do at Ipsos is basically get students to tackle issues, so things like cyberbullying, things like theft, early pregnancies within their sphere. And when you get that kind of feedback from peers, it's much more, I presume, a bit more relevant in terms of making your decisions. So I don't understand exactly your area, but if you're working with schools and colleges and trying to understand morality in the form of content, perhaps you can look at it from their perspective and get them to engage on that topic and find out from their peers what is it that actually is immoral in their eyes, and what are the issues that are affecting them that are probably leading to more destructive behavior. So at least it's understood within a peer level, and decisions are made not from the perspective of the youth as I'm being told to do this by my superior, by my adult, or by my guardian. So I'd just say you can look at it from that kind of perspective.
Almost, and I don't know whether this is, you work towards a shift in the consumption habits, so that instead of regulating the content that's being produced, or working to minimize the content that is being produced, you work towards a different consumer habit by people, looking for content that enhances them other than diminishing them. So that, in my view, would be a better approach, because you are encouraging diversity of content, but you are also educating people through media literacy, type of activities on the type of content that is enhancing and the type of content that might not be very enhancing, and so on, and providing that. Yeah, is that would be the way to do it. And you do it through peer-to-peer kind of empowerment, as it were, horizontal.
Yes, yeah, that would make more sense, be more relevant.
Yeah. So let's we'll come back to you. There's a question about German and research, and you guys are top of the game when it comes to doing research.
I'm afraid I don't know that much about it, but it's true that Germany has a big tradition of very, very intense market research. We have big market research institutes that are almost on every topic do broad, was heißt Untersuchungen? Well, broad research on the, there's just many. Almost every topic is research in Germany, but I can't really tell you what now their special way of doing it is. It's just that they do a lot, and they do it for a long, long time. And actually, the big market research companies are very well respected on their prognosis on developments. Yeah. But the trick they have, I don't know. I just know they do a lot.
I think that, of course, there is a strong tradition of scholarship in the social sciences and so on. And there's investment in the arts, very, very deliberate investment in the arts. And that, the sectors, the creative sector works closely with the researchers. They are not disconnected. In our case, there is a disconnect between the research agenda and the creative agenda. So that the creative agenda does not seem to be connected properly. And researchers, in terms of the packaging of their stuff, they package it in a way that it's not attractive to the creative sector. So because the packaging must be different and so on. So I think that I think this is it. I also think that as I said, research is extremely expensive. So where you have a government that does not support the sector in terms of data collection and does not invest in research, it will be very difficult to have that. Germany would have the resources to be able to do that. In our case, you get short reports from Hiva Fund like this, again commissioned by the British Council, and very, very useful. We work closely with Hiva Fund, but one would still want to have something much more substantive in terms of the status of the industry and so on. Do you want to add on a little bit about research in Germany? A little bit.
Well, as Peter already mentioned, we are not specialists in research, although we use research, and we have used research in this particular production, Country Queen. We are just in the middle of producing it. But maybe I can tell you something about German TV, for instance.
Yes.
The big national TV stations work very much with statistics. Absolutely, they have data. So data is their daily basis. So always in the mornings you can see which program did well and which didn't well, and we also work very much with the national TV stations together, so we know that decisions there are also made on the basis of data. So if a series or whatever is not doing well, it's sorted out quite quickly, you know. So we can discuss that, whether this is always the best thing, because sometimes shows, talk shows, or maybe also TV series narratives need their time to attract an audience, and if you only look at the data, this also can be contradictory. We have seen some very nice narratives in Germany, which in the first year didn't attract nearly nobody, but then the TV station said like, come on, give it a chance, and then in the second year suddenly it attracted more and more audience, and today is like, you know, was heißt Kult? Kult heißt cult, you say cult? It has a really high status. So if you only go after data, sometimes you press those things to death, you know. So it's always good to discuss the interpretation of data.
Yeah, absolutely, because sometimes you need to build audiences, and that takes time. In fact, we talk about you have to saturate the airwaves over a period of time so that people can actually relate to the shows. For example, in the Caribbean islands, we designed a soap opera called Après Plaisir, After the Pleasure. And the way we solve the problem, we're dealing with issues of environment, but of course, dealing with relationships and so on, and we made sure that the show was on 5 days a week. So you make sure it's highly present. So you build loyalty by being there, every day. And within 3 months, things were moving. And so after 3 months, you are able to start seeing the changes, and then you keep building this, and you build it. Within 1 year, the whole country is really talking about this, and so on. And I think that's why you also now build a monitoring and evaluation component to the show, so that you can see whether the extent to which the show has a followership, which sections of the country are following and which sections are not following, and why are they not following? Is it that they are not seeing themselves in the story, and then how do you actually shift the story a little bit so that they can see themselves, and so forth and so on. So this adaptability to the storyline on account of information coming from consumption and so on becomes very, very important. And in the case of Kenya, for example, the role of urban language, and the urban discourse and so on, and that urban lifestyle, and how that actually gets written into the story. So he's actually using research and data to drive the story and to build audiences and so on, and the investment. Emily, I hear your frustration. We don't have enough data. We don't have a government department ministry that has this information. What can NATCOM do, at least for the film sector, so that in 4 months' time we can have something more substantial than stimulating Kenya's film and digital content industry?
Yeah, that's a very tough one, and I think when I started, I said our role is to give technical support to government, and my first statement was that the government doesn't have the value. official value of the sector with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics? Does the government come to collect? Will Kenya National Bureau of Statistics come and collect that data from you? The answer is no. How does government get its data? For instance, if most filmmakers, I believe they register either as film companies, they must be registered with a particular body. Yeah, that is one source of data. Two, when they produce in terms of where do they distribute? Because, for example, through the distribution channels that are there, like through Safaricom, the Skiza, the MCSK, we can actually see from the royalties how much is being generated from there. So government collects from how the industry is functioning. But if the filmmakers are operating in their own cocoons as individuals, out there are no associations. Like, for instance, to what I believe what the CEO, KFCB, when was here, Dr. Mutua, I believe one of the reasons for licensing, he can actually, once he licensing, there's a number. There's already a number allocated to, because you deposit to get a license to be able to showcase or to, they are not just trying to curtail your work, but it's also information on how many people are producing. Yeah? So you find a lot of artists operate just like individuals out there. There's nowhere you're registered as a filmmaker, you have not been licensed, so the numbers are not there. So the government, if you paid your taxes, you filed your, it's called KRA by June, and you write there from the sales of your, this is how much you generated. The government will not even need to go to the ministry, they can easily get that data from KRA. This is what, if they can say, if we have gotten this amount of taxation from the people in the sector, they can easily approximate the value. So it is not just the responsibility of Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it is the responsibility of everyone. And what NATCOM we are doing is to encourage the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics to validate, because there's a lot of data. I didn't say that there's no data. There is data that is not officiated, done by what HIVA has done. A lot of universities, individuals, private organizations, people have done research. But when you look at all this research, can it be compared? Can it be put together? The answer is no. So how do we encourage so that we have data that is comparable? It is strengthening capacities. And why the government, you cannot say the government is not doing something. Establishing the Kenya Film Commission. What is the mandate of the Kenya Film Commission? The Department of Film. It is assumed these institutions are providing government with the numbers. For instance, the Kenya National Library Service requires, if you publish a book, one of the things to get the ISBN number, you should deposit a book. Just going to Kenya National Library Service, the government can easily talk of the books that have been published in a year without even much struggle. So it is us to see, as NATCOM, what we are doing is to strengthen that, bringing stakeholders together, the ministry, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the government agencies, and then encouraging even the actors, if they are in guilds, strong guilds, it will be very easy to get this data. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is very keen actually to have this data, and they don't know how to put it. They put it as others, entertainment. In fact, in our constitution, we classify, if we talk about film, it's among entertainment and gambling among others. And those others are generating, because we are classified as those others, are generating a lot to the economy. But how do we have that specific for the creative sector so that decisions are made? So as NATCOM, what I can promise we can do, our work is not to collect data. It is to encourage these institutions to talk to each other, share with them the best practices of what other countries have done. And one of the key things that we are doing at NATCOM is working with county governments. Like we are telling county governments, can you have at least some data on the artists operating in your county? They are usually licensed by the licensing officer. Yeah, they can easily tell the numbers. Who is in film, who is in visual arts. The minute they start getting this information, it will also help them to convince like the governor at that particular level. Like if they are to convince a governor to fund a film, how will they convince without any data? Right now, a lot of Kenyans, as much as on the digital format, on the international arena, we are not producing any content because the data is not there. But when you go to the ground, a lot of Kenyans are watching locally produced productions in their own languages. It's only that the data is not there. So our work, what we can do is to encourage that partnership, as we will bring the stakeholders together, and we believe if counties start collecting that data at that basic level, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics will easily validate that data. And Kenya National Bureau of Statistics appreciates that a lot of Kenyans are doing like what Eva has done. A lot of people have put, but when they look at that data, how do we validate it as official data? So we engage also KEFC, we can promise as NATCOM, because we do not work directly with the people in the sector, but we can work with government institutions and county governments and encourage them to start collecting data. We've already done that. We were with Prof in Nakuru. I can tell you Nakuru is doing a lot of what they are doing because they've talked to us and they've promised. They want to know who in Nakuru County is engaged in this, so that as they plan, who are they planning for, what are the artists need, what kind of infrastructure is required. But as artists, we also have a responsibility. If I don't pay taxes to my government, there's no record of me anywhere as a filmmaker contributing to the national economy, yet I want so much. You see the dilemma? So I believe the government has the institutions, because the government is not the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. It is everybody. It is the ministry, it is the sector, it is how we are working with each other, so that instead of having so much fragmented data that is not comparable, we can all contribute, our little can contribute to these national databases. Thank you.
You can also use another path. We recently passed the Access to Information Act. So we have a law in this country which requires the government to provide information to its citizens when the citizens require that information. So you could actually write to the Ministry of ICT, which is the ministry in charge of film, and ask a number of questions. How many films do we have in Kenya? Who are the filmmakers in Kenya? And you can ask all sorts of questions, and they are required by law to provide you with that information. So what you'll have done in that case is that you'll have activated the ministry to reach out to the various agencies, the Kenya Film Services, the Kenya Film Classification Board, the Kenya Film Commission, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, KIPRA. You will have activated all these agencies to provide you with the data that you require to be able to make an informed decision by using the Access to Information Act. So that is the way, that's one of the ways that we can actually do this. And the act was passed recently, so it's not like it's been there for a long time. And of course, what is required is that when you seek that information, it should be given to you expeditiously. It should be given to you as soon as possible. And if you think that they are delaying, we have the Commission for Administrative Justice, which is the office of the Ombudsman, and you can write to them and they can follow up that information for you, and they can actually set timelines by the time you get that information. So that is any researcher trying to get information. That is the way I would do it. I would do it by asking for that information as a right, not as a privilege. And then you'll activate the production of that data. I want to give everybody 1 minute or so to just say, like, unless we have a burning comment. Yeah, we have. Oh, the archiving. Yes. The fact that there was that question about, so we have all these films, but where are they? Can you?
Yeah, one of the things I said, the government has established institutions that are mandated to do certain tasks. For instance, the Kenya, it's called what? The KFCB. Kenya Film Classification. That is one of the institutions actually that has a record, should be having a record of every film they license. Yeah? That is one of their core mandates, because as they do these other mandates that they are busy doing on, I don't know, policing, their key mandate, they should be the people that should tell us. They are the custodians. You remember, I remember the last session before this one, Mutua said last year they licensed, is it over 1,000? Yeah. And people are complaining about just one. So which are these 1,000? Do we have them by title? How are they stored? Where are they?
That's the question.
Yeah,
Because
so-
you have the authority, please ask on our behalf.
So that is an institution that is mandated. And when Mutua was here, one of the things that we are also doing as NATCOM, we are trying to sensitize stakeholders on their on the need to participate in governance. Yeah, because when we get the policymakers or the people that have been given mandate to do something here, what kind of questions? We asked the wrong questions. We didn't ask Mutua the right questions today. We actually talked about media freedom. We had a chance to ask him a lot of things because I believe he has information. But the question is, once they collect, where are they storing them? I also know the Department of Film Services has a lot of record on past films. And also KBC, that is also one of their functions. But how do we have a national, because like when you go to the Library of Congress, I know that is a library where you can get anything from film format to book format to digital. You'll get that title there. So I think it is one of our mandate as citizens to participate in governance. If we are not ensuring that our institutions are delivering, how do you tell me to go and ask for you? If we had guilds, like film guilds, strong guilds. In fact, when you're talking about CAP 222, you would be saying, we want this CAP reviewed because it is not serving us. We are feeling we want this specific. But now we talk about very small things. We must ask for what we really need. And our job, I can tell you as NATCOM, we are holding a lot of workshops just to empower people on what is the role of government, because the government cannot do everything. The government chooses what to do and not what to do. The government don't like spending a lot of money. Yeah? But there are those things that the government must do, like having the content that is there. That is not the role of a private citizen. It is the role of government, and we have an institution. Then we have like Kenya Film Commission who have brought us together here. It is also our job to remind them, to ask them these questions. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And I can tell you, I chair the Creative Economy Working Group, and we are asking the tough questions. We are asking the tough questions, and we are trying to push this thing for the sector, on behalf of the sector. We will be meeting the sector, some of the agencies next week, Tuesday, to again follow up on these matters. And one of the whole question of the archiving of local content is so critical. Archiving it for the future and in different formats, the digitization and so on. And we need to know how our stuff is being archived. We really do need to know that. So we'll be following up on this, and we're working on it actually from the Creative Economy Working Group front. And I'm sure that we will be making strides, that I can promise you. Last comments? Anything else pending from your side? Ravi, anything? You good?
I think I'm
You're
good. No final comments from my side. Okay. I'm very curious about the other comments.
Okay. Final comment?
Well, I'm good too, and I'm looking forward very much for the Kenyan film industry to grow rapidly in the next few years, and I'm absolutely convinced it will.
Koi, any final comment?
I'm just hoping we can use more data. There's a huge demand for local content. And what Emily mentioned about county governments and strengthening them. We're seeing a lot of vernacular TV stations doing very well, so we can see there's a lot of hunger for localized content. So I'm hoping to see how that progresses.
Yeah, thank you. Emily, any last word? Or you've done that already?
Yeah, maybe my last comment maybe is on a question that was asked by the gentleman on the phone. Unfortunately, he's on the phone and he's gone out.
Yeah, it's competition.
Yeah, it was about the School Music and Drama Festival and national values. And I think he should go to the Ministry of Education. I attended the last School Music and Drama Festival that was actually sponsored by they are called the National Cohesion. Yeah, there's some NCIC. And I can tell you all the productions, the music, the drama, they were on values and they were quite good. The only thing is after the festivals, what happens to this content? Maybe can we have a way of channeling it out so that other people can see it? It is only the people who go for it's called the State's Concert, which is on invitation, who get to see the best. But I can tell you there's a lot. The Ministry of Education is doing a lot. And the schools produced very, very good material in terms of our values. It's only that it remains at that level. It has not been disseminated. And for your research, I would encourage you to liaise with them. They can share with you information. Yes.
May I just...
And finish up, I'll finish up by just saying that one of the ways of enhancing the capability of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, KBC, is actually precisely broadcasting the Kenya Schools drama and film products. There is no reason. I mean, we have been producing dramas and films forever. There is no reason why KBC should be showing Mexican soap operas when there is so much of local content and is a national broadcaster. You know, one of the ways of ensuring that our content gets space is through that station, which is catered for through our taxes, so that even if it is not going through, you know, the private media houses, KBC should take it as part of its responsibility to broadcast our stuff, you know, and I think that would really cater for Geoffrey's question on the values and so on as a national broadcaster. Yeah, I think let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Now what I want to say. At the end, I totally agree to you, and just wanted to mention that we just set up our website, www.countryqueen.tv, and please look at it, look at the trailer, and send us comments. So as we are still collecting data, so maybe we can do a little research regarding your taste, whether you liked it or not. We can still work on the product, and maybe due to your help, we can improve it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Let's give it up to the panel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And let's continue engaging. Let's continue talking. Let's continue enriching each other. Thank you so much.